Now, this may sound like an extreme example to you, but when you're living life like an emergency, it's easy to miss the warning signs. When you're living in chaos, it's easy to miss the warning signs. Those physical and emotional symptoms, clues that tell us our lives are spinning out of control. So what about you? What don't you have time for right now? Your family? Your friends? But I also know that living in chaos is killing us. Because chaos is expensive. It takes longer to do things. We make lots more mistakes when we're living in it. Chaos is excluding. We can't hold this higher vision for our patients, ourselves, or anyone else. And chaos is exhausting. Right now, 2 out of 3 of you are suffering from physical, emotional, or spiritual exhaustion, just as healthcare providers. All signs of burnout. So just take a minute now and look to your left and look to your right. Now I know you're okay, but those other 2 people, they are in trouble. We have to stay centered and focused in order to give light. We have to go from chaos to calm. And the calm I'm talking about today is not boring or sedate. In fact, the calm I'm talking about today will energize the performance in every area of your life because it's going to give you more peace and more purpose and frankly, more productivity. And to go from chaos to calm requires one critical ingredient, and that is mindfulness. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose in the present moment, as if your life depended on it, because it does. These practices keep us in the moment, keep us focused, keep us present. They also help us remember why we do what we do. One day I was in the produce section of our grocery store talking to the produce manager, and this beautiful woman, long dark hair in her 20s with a baby, came up to me and said, "I know you. You're Diane. You saved my life." And I looked at her and I didn't recognize her. And I said, "Oh yes, tell me your name." Well, my name's Alice, and when I delivered my baby, I came into the ER really sick, and you took care of me. And I looked at her, and I looked at the baby, and I started to remember that Alice had come in about 9 months before after laboring at home for 48 hours. And now she delivered the baby fine, but she had not delivered her placenta. So she came in hypovolemic, barely responsive, and we would have shipped her out except for she was too unstable. So I spent 12 hours pumping her full of fluids and volume and expanders and pressors even at one point. Now what was so amazing about her is that she not only remembered my voice, she remembered what I said. She said, I remember that you told me that my baby girl was beautiful and that I'd be holding her soon. And you told me I was so brave to endure such a long labor. And I remember you took my hand and you held my hand. And you said, you're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Well, I started crying, and she was crying, and the baby was crying, and the produce manager was crying. But what a gift. What a gift she gave me that day. To help us remember why we do what we do. Going from chaos to calm today is not nearly as important as going to calm tomorrow. Because tomorrow is when life happens, and we have diverts and call-ins and emergencies and reactions and all the things that don't go well in a day. That's when it's most important. So can you practice beginner's mind and be open to something new? Can you let go of something or someone not serving you? Can you practice compassion, not just for your patients, but for your colleagues and yourself? And can you choose to do what you do instead of have to do? I mean, let's face it, you are experts. You know a lot about a lot. You could work anywhere. You've done everything once, right? But you choose to stay and to be here now. A dear friend of mine was diagnosed with breast cancer a couple of years ago, and she had stage 4, so she was required to have mastectomy and radiation and chemotherapy. And Kay was mostly concerned about the chemo. And she's a very spiritual person. She's now a minister. And she wanted to write positive affirmations on labels to put them on the chemotherapy bags. Affirmations like good and light and healing. And so she made her labels and had them in her hand and walked into her first chemotherapy appointment. And she was really nervous about the chemo, but she was also really nervous about what the nurses might think of her, that she was some kind of a kook, that she wanted these words placed on the IV bag. So the nurse came in and introduced herself, and Kay said, well, I got these words, and I'm wondering if we could put them on the IV bag of the chemo. And the nurse looked at her and looked at the words and looked at her and said, well, sure, of course we can do that. So she took the words and she placed them all on the chemo bag, and it happened to be red, so it was really good to have words covering the red. And said, now, is this okay? Does this work? Do we need to move anything? And just like you saw in the film, Kay said, I found an angel. She was so relieved. That day, that nurse chose to put those labels on the IV bag. Just like she chose to deal with the call-in, and she chose to deal with the allergic reaction, and she chose to deal with the no-show. We choose it all.